At 20,000 feet over the Atlantic, passenger Sarah Mitchell was going into labor 3 weeks early. The nearest airport was 400 miles away through severe storms that made landing impossible. In seat 12C, a quiet woman reading a medical journal closed her book and stood up. What the panicked flight crew didn't know was that Dr. Angel Rivera had delivered babies in Afghan field hospitals under Taliban fire, and today, she would deliver hope at cruising altitude. Flight 892 from New York to London was cruising smoothly at 20,000 feet when Sarah Mitchell felt the first contraction. She was 37 weeks pregnant, traveling to London for her husband's job transfer. The contraction was sharp and unmistakable. Her baby was coming. "Excuse me," Sarah called to flight attendant Jessica Walsh, her voice tight with pain. I think I'm in labor." Jessica's training kicked in immediately. "Let me get you more comfortable. How far apart are the contractions?" "About 5 minutes." Sarah gasped as another wave hit. "But they're getting stronger." In seat 12C, Dr. Angel Rivera had been trying to lose herself in a medical journal during the long flight home from her deployment. She was returning from her second tour in Afghanistan, carrying wounds that couldn't be seen, but ran deeper than any physical injury. Her Army Medical Corps uniform was packed away in her overhead bag, replaced by civilian clothes that felt foreign after 3 years of military service. The woman beside her, an elderly British lady named Margaret, had tried making conversation earlier. "Visiting London for pleasure, dear?" Coming home, Angel had replied simply, though Houston hadn't felt like home in a very long time. Margaret had noticed the medical journal. "Are you a doctor?" Angel had hesitated. "Was. AM. It's complicated." Houston. For years earlier, Dr. Angel Rivera's life had been perfect in a way that seems impossible until you're living it. At 32, she was one of Houston Methodist's most respected obstetricians, with a practice that kept her busy but not overwhelmed. Her husband, David, a pediatric surgeon at Texas Children's Hospital, understood the demands of medical life in a way that made their marriage effortless. But it was their daughter, Sophia, who made everything magical. At 2 years old, Sophia had her mother's dark hair and her father's thoughtful brown eyes. She spoke in complete sentences that often surprised adults and had an uncanny ability to sense when people needed comfort. "Mama sad." Sophia had asked one morning when Angel was reviewing a difficult case. "Just worried about work, baby girl," Angel had said, lifting Sophia into her lap. "Fix it with kisses?" Sophia had suggested, planting a wet kiss on her mother's cheek. Angel had laughed, the sound filling their sunny kitchen. "You know what? I think that might actually work." That same afternoon, Angel had delivered twin girls to a young couple who had been trying to conceive for 8 years. As she placed the babies in their parents' arms, she had thought about Sophia's simple wisdom. Sometimes the best medicine really was love. David had picked up Sophia from daycare that Thursday evening, as he did every week when Angel worked late. They were discussing weekend plans over dinner when Angel's phone had rung. "Dr. Rivera, there's been an accident." The voice had said, "You need to get to Memorial Hermann immediately." The drunk driver had been texting when he ran the red light. The impact had been so severe that David and Sophia were declared dead at the scene. Angel had arrived at the hospital where she worked 5 days a week, expecting to console another family's tragedy, only to discover it was her own. In the aircraft cabin, Captain Mike Chen's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there are any doctors or medical professionals on board, please identify yourselves to a flight attendant immediately." Angel closed her medical journal and looked toward the commotion in row 15. She could hear Sarah Mitchell's labored breathing and her husband's panicked voice. Houston, 3 years earlier. The months after the funeral had been a blur of well-meaning visitors, casseroles she couldn't eat, and a medical practice she could no longer bear to maintain. Angel had tried to return to work 6 weeks after the accident, but the first time she'd held a newborn, she had broken down completely. "Take all the time you need," her practice partner, Dr. Susan Chun, had said gently. "Grief has its own timeline." But Angel knew this wasn't just grief. This was a fundamental breaking of something inside her that she wasn't sure could be repaired. Every crying baby sounded like Sophia. Every new mother's joy felt like a mockery of her loss. Her sister Carmen had found her one evening, 3 months later, sitting in Sophia's empty nursery. "Angel, you can't keep living like this," Carmen had said, settling beside her on the floor among the untouched toys. "I don't know how to live any other way," Angel had replied. That's when Carmen had shown her the Army Medical Corps recruitment brochure. "Remember when we were kids, and you always talk about joining Doctors Without Borders? About using your skills to help people who had nothing." Angel had stared at the brochure. "That was before I had everything to lose." "Maybe that's exactly why you need to do it now," Carmen had said quietly. "Maybe you need to save other people's children, since you couldn't save your own." "I'm a doctor," Angel said quietly to Jessica. "Obstetrics. I can help." Jessica's relief was immediate. "Thank God. The passenger in 15A is in labor, and we can't land for at least 2 hours." Angel gathered her composure and followed Jessica to where Sarah Mitchell was now lying across 3 seats, her husband Mike holding her hand and looking terrified. "Hi, Sarah. I'm Dr. Rivera," Angel said, her voice calm and reassuring despite the aircraft's vibration around them. "I'm going to take care of you and your baby." Afghanistan. 2 years earlier, Angel's first delivery in Afghanistan had been under very different circumstances. Miriam, a 16-year-old Afghan girl, had arrived at the base hospital during a rocket attack. She had been in labor for 2 days, walking through mountain passes with her mother-in-law to reach help. "Doctor, we need to get to the bunkers," Sergeant Martinez had urged as sirens wailed. Angel had looked at Miriam's frightened face, had seen Sophia's innocence reflected there. The baby's crowning. "We don't have time." The delivery had taken place with mortar rounds falling the distance, the generator providing sporadic power, and only a medic named Johnson to assist. But when Angel had placed a healthy baby boy in Miriam's arms, the teenager had smiled through her tears. To shake her, Dr. Miriam had whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time since Sophia's death that Angel had felt something besides emptiness. Back on Flight 892, Angel quickly assessed Sarah's condition. "Sarah, I need to examine you to see how far along you are. Is this your first baby?" "Yes," Sarah gasped. "It's too early. Something's wrong." "Actually, 37 weeks is considered full term," Angel reassured her, though she was already calculating the challenges of delivering a baby in an aircraft cabin. "Your baby is ready to meet the world." 18 months earlier, Angel's most challenging case had come during her second tour. Fatima, a young teacher, had arrived at the field hospital with complications from a breech presentation. The Taliban had been conducting operations nearby, and the medical team had been ordered to evacuate within the hour. "Dr. Rivera, we have to go," Major Collins had insisted. Angel had looked at her patient, who was barely conscious from blood loss. "If we move her now, we'll lose both mother and baby. If we stay, we might lose everyone." Angel had made the decision that defined her service. Then evacuate everyone else. "I'm staying with my patient." For 6 hours, Angel had worked alone in the field hospital while gunfire echoed outside. She had performed an emergency C-section by generator light, managed complications that would have challenged a full surgical team, and delivered a healthy baby girl, while fighting to save the mother's life. When the evacuation helicopter had finally returned, they found Angel sitting beside Fatima's bed, both mother and daughter stable and healthy. "You could have been killed," Major Collins had said. Angel had looked down at the sleeping baby. Some things are worth the risk. Angel was now setting up her makeshift delivery room, using airline blankets and pillows. Flight attendants had cleared the surrounding rows, and Jessica was helping gather supplies from the aircraft's medical kit. "Captain," Angel called through the intercom, "I need you to know this baby is coming whether we land or not. But I can do this safely if you can keep us as stable as possible." "Roger, Doctor. We'll do everything we can." Angel examined Sarah again. "You're at 8 centimeters. We're going to have a baby in the next hour." Mike Mitchell was pale, but trying to stay strong for his wife. "Is she going to be okay? Is the baby okay?" Houston Memorial, for years earlier. The irony hadn't been lost on Angel that her last delivery in Houston had been on the same day David and Sophia died. Mrs. Rodriguez, a young mother having her third child, had been in Angel's care that Thursday afternoon. Dr. Rivera, you look tired, Mrs. Rodriguez had observed between contractions. Angel had smiled. Long day, but we're almost done. Your baby is eager to meet you. When baby Carlos had arrived, healthy and perfect, Angel had felt the familiar joy of successful delivery. She had handed the infant to his mother, completed the routine post-delivery care, and left the hospital thinking about the weekend plans she and David had made. It was only later, holding Sophia's favorite stuffed rabbit in the funeral home, that Angel had realized Carlos Rodriguez would be her last delivery in Houston. She couldn't have known then that it would take 3 years in a war zone before she could find the strength to deliver another baby. "Sarah, I can see the baby's head," Angel announced as the aircraft hit a patch of turbulence. "On the next contraction, I need you to push as hard as you can." The cabin crew had created as much privacy as possible, but Angel was acutely aware that 200 passengers were depending on her expertise. The responsibility felt familiar. Lives in the balance. No room for error. Afghanistan, 1 year earlier. During her final month of deployment, Angel had delivered 23 babies. Each one had been a victory against the chaos surrounding them. There was Zara, born during a dust storm that had grounded all aircraft. Hassan, delivered while his father served guard duty outside the base. Little Aisha, who had arrived so quickly that Angel had barely had time to scrub in. But it was the final delivery that had changed everything. Rashida, a young widow whose husband had been killed by an IED, had labored for 18 hours. The baby had been in distress, the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. Angel had worked for 3 hours to save both mother and child. When the baby had finally been born, blue and not breathing, Angel had performed infant CPR while rockets fell outside. "Please," Rashida had whispered in English, "please save him. He is all I have." Angel had worked over the tiny body, breathing life in the lungs that would inflate, massaging a heart that wouldn't beat. For 10 minutes that felt like hours. She had fought death itself. When the baby had finally taken his first breath, his cry had been the most beautiful sound Angel had ever heard, more beautiful even than Sophia's first cry 3 years earlier. Rashida had named him Angel, after the American doctor who had refused to give up. "Push, Sarah." Angel encouraged as another contraction peaked. The babies had emerged, and Angel carefully supported it as she checked for the umbilical cord. "Clear. Perfect. One more big push of the shoulders," Angel said. Sophia's birth, 6 years earlier. Angel remembered her own labor. David holding her hand while Dr. Martinez delivered their daughter. The overwhelming joy of hearing Sophia's first cry, the indescribable moment of holding her child for the first time. "She's perfect," David had whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's going to change everything," Angel had replied, not knowing how prophetic those words would be. Sophia had indeed changed everything, first by bringing unimaginable joy, then by taking away when she left. With a final effort from Sarah, the baby slipped into Angel's hands, a perfect, healthy girl who immediately began crying with strong, clear lungs. Angel's eyes filled with tears as she held the infant. For a moment, she saw Sophia's face in this new life, felt the joy she thought she'd lost forever. But this time, the memory didn't bring only pain. It brought gratitude for having loved so deeply. "You have a daughter," Angel announced, her voice thick with emotion. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause as Angel placed the baby on Sarah's chest. Through her own tears, she performed a routine post-delivery care, checking vitals, delivering the placenta, ensuring both mother and baby were stable. Carmen's visit 6 months earlier. Angel's sister had visited her during her final weeks in Afghanistan. Carmen had flown from Houston to Kabul, determined to see what had transformed her grieving sister into someone who would find purpose again. "You look different," Carmen had observed as they sat in Angel's quarters. "Different how?" "Like yourself again. Sad but yourself." Angel had considered this. "I'll always be sad, Carmen. Sophia was half my heart. But I've learned that the other half can still beat. It can still serve." Carmen had nodded. "She will be proud of you." "I hope so. I think about her every time I deliver a baby. Every time I save a life, I feel like I'm honoring her memory." Dr. Rivera, Sarah said softly as Angel cleaned up. How can we ever thank you? Angel looked at the perfect baby girl nursing contentedly in her mother's arms. You don't need to thank me. Just love her every day. Mike Mitchell was crying openly. Doctor, I don't know what would have happened without you. Final day in Afghanistan. Angel's last patient in Afghanistan had been an American soldier, Corporal Jennifer Hayes, 22 years old, who had gone into premature labor after a convoy attack. The young woman had been terrified, not just of giving birth, but of raising a child alone while her husband served his own deployment in Iraq. What if I'm not a good mother? Jennifer had asked during labor. Angel had looked at this brave young woman who had served her country while pregnant. The fact that you're worried about it means you already are one. Baby Michael Hayes had been born healthy at 35 weeks, despite the circumstances. As Angel had placed him in Jennifer's arms, the new mother had said something that would stay with her forever. Thank you for helping me bring hope into this place where there's so much darkness. Angel thought of all the lives she delivered, all the mothers she'd helped, all the healing that had happened in the 3 years since she lost Sophia. Each birth had been a small victory against the darkness that threatened to consume her. What's her name going to be? Angel asked Sarah and Mike. The couple looked at each other, then at Angel. We've been thinking about names for months, Sarah said. But after what happened today, after what you did for us, would it be okay if we named her Angel? Angel's composure finally broke. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. I would be honored. 2 hours later, Flight 892 landed safely in London. Medical personnel were waiting. But Angel's delivery had been so successful that both mother and baby were in perfect health. As they wheeled Sarah and baby Angel off the plane, Captain she made an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Dr. Angel Rivera, whose skill and calm professionalism brought new life into our world today at 20,000 feet. This is a flight none of us will ever forget. The passengers gave Angel a standing ovation, but she barely noticed. She was thinking of Sophia, of all the mothers and babies in Afghanistan, of all the ways that life finds to continue even after the deepest loss. Margaret, the elderly British woman who had sat beside her, approached as they deplaned. My dear, that was extraordinary. You're clearly meant to be bringing babies into this world. Angel smiled, feeling something shift inside her. Maybe I am. Houston Cemetery, present day. Angel was back in Houston now, visiting Sophia's grave for the first time since her deployment. She placed fresh flowers on the small headstone, daisies, Sophia's favorite. I helped bring a new angel into the world today, she whispered. I think you would have liked her. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and for the first time in 3 years, Angel felt something like peace. I'm going to start practicing again, she told Sophia. I'm ready to help other mommies have their babies. I think that's what you want me to do. 6 months later, Angel received a card in the mail. It was a photo of baby Angel Mitchell, now healthy and growing, with a note from Sarah. She's walking now, and her first word was Mama. Every day when I hold her, I think of you and how you brought her safely into this world. Thank you for giving us our miracle. Angel smiled and pinned the photo to her refrigerator in her new Houston apartment, next to a picture of Sophia and photos of all the babies she delivered in Afghanistan. Dr. Angel Rivera had opened a new practice, specializing in high-risk pregnancies and traumatic deliveries. She had learned that grief never truly ends, but it can transform into something beautiful, a deeper capacity for compassion, a stronger appreciation for life, and the ability to find hope in the darkest places. Sometimes healing comes not from forgetting our losses, but from using them to serve others. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give is the expertise born from our deepest pain. At 20,000 feet, Angel had delivered more than just a baby. She had delivered hope, both for the Mitchell family and for herself. In a world that often seems dark, sometimes angels appear in the most unexpected places, carrying the skills to transform tragedy into triumph, one life at a time. And sometimes, in saving others, we find the strength to save ourselves.